Okay guys, so I originally wasn't going to be making a video on Atomic Heart, but the game came out, I got a bunch of hype, I played it, I didn't think it lived up to all of the hype that the game was getting, I thought it was just fine, it felt too familiar to things like Bioshock and Dishonored that I played so much that it just wasn't interesting to me. If you haven't played that type of game before and this is new to you, great, you're gonna love it, you'll have fun, it's a blast. But then the inverse happened. After about a week of just hype, 9 out of 10, 8 out of 10, 10 out of 10, best game ever, game of the year, fantastic. Then the opposite happened. Hate, trash, can't get through it, awful game, 0 out of 10, boring game. And that's not the case, so I'm gonna go ahead and give you guys my thoughts and kind of where this middle ground needs to fall for this game. Now, if you've never played a Bioshock or Dishonored type title, then this game, like I said in the intro, you'll have a blast. It's your first-person, shoot-'em-up, exploration type game where you go around facing new types of enemies, you get increasingly more difficult and advanced weapons and abilities as you go along, and then you have to fight bosses and repeat over and over and over until the end of the game. Now, none of it's bad. Right? None of this is below a 5 out of 10, so if you see any score below that, they're just bullshitting, I don't know what they're going on about, right? The boss fights are cool, the weapons are unique enough, I mean, this looks like it's straight out of The Incredibles, right? Without getting into too much spoilers. But, that being said, if you've played these games, like I said, the Bioshocks, especially the most recent one, Infinite, and you don't even have to have played the most recent Dishonored, just the first one, it's a lot of the same thing. There's a lot of looting, a lot of going around and picking up parts and upgrading your weapon bits and fighting the same types of enemies and the same waves of enemies in these semi-open rooms to try to figure out how to traverse, and it just feels very similar, right? And this might just be a me problem because that was back in the day. I didn't have Xbox Live, so I played the hell out of the Dishonored game. Right, the first one I probably played it 10 plus times, right? So I'm just very familiar with this type of gameplay, and while it's not exactly the same, it's close enough to where it can feel repetitive. Now, it doesn't give you an absurd amount of ammo or anything like a Call of Duty type game. It gives you enough to get through encounters, but you might have to switch to your melee weapon or resort to your abilities. My problem with those abilities is that in the starting phases, they're not good enough. What do I mean by that? Well, typically in games, when you get a new ability, again, let's just keep it simple for the sake of spoilers. Let's say you get a lightning ability, like you see here, this telekinesis ability. The starting version of that ability has to be interesting enough to keep the player interested in that ability and want to upgrade it more. If your starting point for all of these abilities is bad enough to where nobody has any interest in upgrading them to see what they do further, then your abilities kind of fall apart and nobody ends up spending any points on upgrading those abilities and just becomes a first-person shooter. Realistically, the combination of the two is what makes the game good. Now, if you've played none of these games, you have no clue what the hell I'm talking about, ignore everything I've said. This is your sci-fi, Soviet, dystopian future where you get to run around with an AK and superpowers and shoot at some robots, right? It's an absolute blast. If you've never played anything like this before, it's just an all-around good time. That's where I see these 8, 9, 10s coming in. But when you've someone who's played this type of thing before, it gets repetitive. So, this isn't a review. I didn't want to make a whole thing diving into every single aspect of the game. But I did want to say that those people that are putting it below a 5, even below a 6 is pretty low. And those that are giving it 10s that have played this type of game before, it's not anything new or groundbreaking. It just does something that old games did really well and updates it into the present setting. But that's just my thoughts. Let me know if you're one of the people that loves this game or hates it. If you disagree with me, if you completely agree with me, let me know down in the comments below. And I'll see you guys on the next one.